What's up, y'all? It's your boy Spike. I'm here with a review of Jay-Z's 444 album. Let's go! But first, I just want to say that this channel is kind of going to be rare. I'm not going to do a lot of music reviews. Mainly, I'm going to do music theory breakdowns of hip-hop and stuff. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second, you know what I'm saying? This is a monumentous occasion. So, I thought I'd start things off, you know, with a little review just to integrate people in, just to get people associated, you know.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Ho, H to the O-V.
Jay-Z doesn't really need an introduction. I mean, as it says on the cover album, this is his 13th studio album, which, I don't know, asking me, I think that's a little pretentious. Like, this is his 13th studio album. Like, I know you don't need an introduction, but come on, Jay-Z. You could put Jay-Z's, or even mine. Why not just put, this is my 13th studio album? But you know, that's beside the point. We're here to talk about the music, not the cover, because I think we can all agree the cover is a little So with this album, I think if you are on Twitter, if you're on Instagram, if you're on any sort of social media, you probably can tell that this is more of a personal album. It's going in a different direction than most Jay-Z albums. Jay-Z hasn't been the money hose clothes guy for a minute now. I personally don't think he was ever that guy, but that was sort of his image in the popular mainstream vernacular, if you will, up until maybe, I'd say, up for his first 4 albums or so. So up until like the mid-2000s. And then actually, ironically, that's when most people would say his music kind of fell off. Again, these aren't my opinions. These are most people's opinions. I personally think he was always fire, because on this album, you do get Jay-Z sort of dropping the Jay-Z facade and kind of coming at you more from just a Sean perspective. That is exemplified by the very first song, Kill Jay-Z. On this song, you hear Jay-Z sort of addressing everything that's surrounded his name. And he's one of those guys that kind of stays out the public eye so much that you forget how much talk there is about him until he starts to address it, until he starts to talk about, you know, Kanye ranting on stage for 20 minutes about him and Beyonce, and Beyonce releasing Lemonade and the rumors that he cheated. I still call them rumors, because you never know. This could all be a ruse, you know, so let's give the man some slack. This could all be a rumor. But I'm just gonna, you know, innocent until proven guilty. I still have not seen a picture of this man with another woman. He takes an interesting approach in the song where he's sort of taking ownership of all of the negative press, all of the just negative things that have happened in his life, not necessarily pushing it onto others. You hear a lot of rappers in their introductory songs, they kind of talk about what's going on in their life, but they don't necessarily talk about what they did to sort of get to that point. He kind of starts off with saying, Jay-Z, you shot your own brother. How can we trust Jay-Z? The real question, though, is, can Metro Boomin trust Jay-Z? Everyone's gonna be talking about how he's addressing Kanye and how he's addressing cheating, or the rumors of cheating on his wife, of being infidelis. That's not a word. Of infidelity and things like that. Me personally, those aren't the things that I really pay attention to when I'm listening to the album. I think he had to talk about it because people talk about it, and this album is definitely a more personal approach to his music. But I don't feel like there's any sort of closure in it. There's not like this big statement like, Kanye West, he's not my brother no more. It's not all that. He's sort of, with the first song, Kill Jay-Z, just basically saying, look, if you're expecting big ballin', big pimpin', even on his last album where he had songs like With Me, You Know I Got It, and Beach Is Better, which are sort of big braggadocious Jay-Z songs, you're not gonna get any of that on this album for the most part. I think that that's sort of what the message of Kill Jay-Z is, and I think it pretty much holds true for the entire album. Because with this album, I think Jay-Z mainly focuses on 3 main themes, and that's the rap / just general entertainment music industry, personal themes of just family issues and what it's like to be a dad and what it's like to just be a family man, essentially, and 3, black ownership in the black community, because obviously what other community would it be? Jay-Z is known for his ability to weave in different topics and to be able to talk about, you know, mixing braggadocious anthems like Big Pimpin' and things like that, street gritty tales, maybe mixing it with talking about selling crack before and now he's got money and stuff, but also be able to bring in some sort of conscious observation of the social political landscape as a whole. That's sort of always what's made Jay-Z, I think, special as an MC, as a rapper, as a lyricist, whatever you want to call it. On this album, it's less of the braggadocio mixed with the social political statements, as it is just the social political statement being the main point of the record, bringing in his personal life in order to sort of support those facts and things. For instance, you have The Story of OJ, which is my favorite song on the album. It sounds like a simple line, but in the context of the entire song where he's talking about, black people investing in their own communities and why can't seem to do that, why Jewish people maybe, not saying this is me, I know that, I was afraid when I heard it, I was like, whoa, Jay-Z, be careful, you can't talk about the Jewish community, they really get mad at stereotypes like that, but no one seems to be mad about it, so okay. But like Jay-Z said, okay. But on this song, as he does throughout most of the album, he sort of focuses on the themes of black capitalism, black people pulling together their wealth and making sure that we're constantly reinvesting in our own communities, and also sort of poking fun at the rampant consumerism in the black community that doesn't necessarily put dollars back into our own pocket. Whether that be throwing money in a strip club, even though I do think that most strip clubs that black people go to are owned by black people, but that's besides the point. And I think it's effective. I think that if there's anybody who can talk about that with any sort of clout, it would be Jay-Z, because I think he is probably the most famous black businessman, I would say, person, but there's Oprah. He sort of has a track record of reinvesting into the black community at this point, so it doesn't ever come across as false, and I think it also never comes across as preachy, because he always manages to get in some references to the fact that in the past he may have not been the best at reinvesting into the black community. For instance, he has a line on The Story of OJ where he says he bought every V12 engine, but he could have basically taken that money and reinvested in his own community. If I had to critique this theme of black ownership and how he expresses it in the album, I would say that the only time he ever really seems to fixate on it and give a sort of a plan as to how to go forward and change things is in The Story of OJ. But that does go part and parcel with his critiques about the rap industry and the entertainment industry as a whole, which again crops up on The Story of OJ, but let's spread it around a little bit. I'm not going to talk about that song too much. This is a theme that comes up in Jay-Z's music as a whole, his entire catalog, especially once he got more into the industry and got bigger, like on the Black Album and such. But I think on this album, it has a different punch to it, because he's talking about very specific and personal instances where he's seen the rap industry be fake. As for instance, on the song Caught Their Eyes, which features a really nice feature by Frank Ocean. Kind of sounds like it's processed to almost sound like a sample itself. It's very sort of lo-fi, kind of glitchy, sort of like the soulful samples that play a lot in the background of these songs. On the second half of Caught Their Eyes, he raps about having a talk with the late great Prince, and how Prince laid out his vision for how his legacy should be handled after he's dead. And now, after Prince actually being dead and seeing, the people, the powers that be selling tickets to come view his house, and also maybe managing his catalog in a way that it seems like Jay-Z doesn't seem to have understood Prince wanting it to be managed after he was dead. Again, it sort of strengthens his critiques of the rap industry, or just the music industry as a whole, being fake and being sort of predatory. On the song Moonlight, for instance, he talks about all these new rappers with the guns and the videos and the Instagram videos with having guns and stuff, but you never hear about them shooting anybody, so it's like, why show off these guns if you're not going to do anything with it? It's interesting he mentions this, because throughout this album, I think that Jay-Z levels a lot of little jabs and critiques at the new rap game. At guys, again on Moonlight, he talks about everybody having the same flows and not really kind of being able to tell people apart, which is funny because I could just imagine like 47-year-old Jay-Z. He's like an older guy, so he's probably turning on the radio like, who is this person rapping? Who is this Kodak Black? Who is this Lil Uzi Vert? What is this, all this auto-tune? And it's not, I think again, he keeps it from being too preachy, because again on the song Family Feud, he talks about, old people need to back, he's like, old rap fans need to back down, because Tupac had a nose ring too. Because he is 47 years old, which sort of brings us into the next theme of the album, which is the themes of him being a family man, him learning how to, even at 47 years old, still learning how to navigate being this huge star, but then at the same time, raising, 3 children at this point, and, and being an old man. I'm just playing, Jay-Z, you're not old, man. And of course, this is when we're gonna get into the part of the review everyone's gonna talk about, you know, him cheating on Beyonce, and oh my god, the song 444. That's the first song people are gonna go to because it's like actually about, it's like a response to Lemonade in a way. You know what I mean? He does it, he goes through, he makes amends, he talks about, you know, maybe being insecure in a relationship, or maybe, you know, not necessarily being ready to love or being emotionally available or open. I will say that when he does talk about it, it never comes across as him just being like he had to. It truly, you know, if you are somebody who has been cheated on or something, you might want to listen to 444 because as a to feel better about yourself or something. I don't know, like it's a cool song. I think it's a cool, you know, interlude essentially because it's in the middle. It's the 5th song of the album. It's the middle of the album, and it kind of bridges you into the second half, which is less about the themes of black ownership in the music industry. I mean, you do talk about that a little bit, but it gets into a lot of his legacy, how he wants his wealth to be passed over once he's dead, and how he feels like the entire black community should be operating in that capacity. As far as the other themes of family, as raising kids and stuff go, you hear a lot of that cropping up on songs like Legacy. But he has one of his children, I guess it would be, they only have one that's old enough to talk. I guess it would be Blue Ivy, talking about, you know, asking him, Daddy, what's a will? And he sort of goes in and talks about how he wants his wealth to be spread out throughout the generations after him that come to follow. And this is something that sort of crops up throughout the album, but especially towards the second half on songs like 444 and Legacy and Family Feud, where he sort of talks about that you cannot be truly rich and wealthy without your family getting at pieces of pie, without your family being one, without your family being happy together. And he sort of references on Family Feud Scarface and how and Tony Montana met his demise when his wife wasn't happy, and sort of that maybe being Jay-Z's future had he not somehow made amends with Beyonce. Doesn't really go into it. I don't really think that's for us to know, so he kind of like keeps it private, but you get what I'm saying. Now, as far as the sonics on the album go, you know, just in terms of the mixing, the beats, the da-da-da. If you don't know this, the entire album was produced by who has worked with Jay-Z, Drake, I think even Kanye West. He's a big time producer if you don't know the name. Check him out, he's got some great beats. I think he even has some videos on YouTube explaining how he makes beats, so if you're a producer, definitely worth going in and checking out those resources. But I will say the production on this album is very refreshing. I think that this is a critique you'll hear a lot of people saying about hip-hop nowadays, that it's like so producer driven, and yet the producers get so little credit, but we're not going to talk about that in this video. It's so producer driven, you know, they say, oh, this rapper wouldn't be anything if it weren't for his beats. You know, this rapper wouldn't, he would sound so trash if it weren't for the fact he's on a hot beat, which I don't really care, but I would say even more so than Jay-Z's other albums, which Jay-Z is a very rappery rapper, you know, he very much so wants the focus to be on his lyrics. I would say that this album is definitely the most that you'll hear his production sort of just take a backseat to him, to the point where a lot of these drums don't even slap. I mean, if you put them on in the car and you turn it all the way up, you're not going to get the thud in your chest that a lot of hip-hop nowadays, or even just generally, will give you. I think it serves the album. Normally, you know, I'm a guy, I'm from the South, I'm from Georgia, you know, I want the 808s, I want the big kicks. Even if you're talking about something conscious, I want to feel the drums. But I think on this album, again, I mean, Jay-Z's 47, I feel like definitely does a good job of putting together production that is, for lack of a better term, age appropriate for a 47-year-old man with a family to be rocking over. You know, I mean, very old, like old school soul samples on this. He samples Nina Simone twice, has a Stevie Wonder sample on there for the song Smile, which I would actually say the drums on that song are some of the most modernist drums that you'll hear on the record. It has those sort of like fast hi-hats and sort of a halftime vibe to it. If you don't know what halftime is, I'll create a video about that, definitely, don't worry about it. You know, like I said, this is a music theory channel, not a music review channel, but we're moving on. So if you want production that is sort of like, you know, very gonna hit you in the chest, gonna get you dancing, this is not the album for that. But I will say the beats do have a certain groove to them that's helped by the way chops up the samples on this album. He does a good job of not making it too boom bap. I mean, these are soul samples being chopped up, so there's always obviously gonna be a bit of a boom bap influence. But what he does is sort of on, especially on songs like The Story of OJ, Kill Jay-Z, he might put a little bit of a disc off sound effect. If you ever just took a vinyl disc on a turntable and just stopped it, and you just hear that, you'll hear that at the end of a sample chop. Or he'll do a thing where he'll put multiple chops per measure. So it might be 4 or so chops within a loop. Or one of my favorite song on the record is also my favorite beat, which is The Story of OJ. Nina Simone's For Women, that song is what's being sampled. And it's that opening piano riff, that I'll play it right here. It's the opening piano riff to that song, but it almost as if he samples it throughout the song from different parts of the record. So it sort of has this lurching feel to it where, yes, that opening piano riff, but at a certain moment, Nina Simone might come in and say, "My skin is black," or even just a YOLO, like, I'm not making that up. There literally is every now and then just a YOLO in the middle of the beat for no reason, but I like it. I like that there's sort of this really glitchy, just kind of like off-kilter vibe about the way the samples are chopped up. But it doesn't ever come together as like weird or experimental. I think has been in the mainstream hip-hop game so long that he can do these sort of glitchy samples. He can do really complex sample chops without it getting to be too experimental for it to sound like a Jay-Z record. I think Jay-Z sounds very at home and very relaxed. It's very not rappery, which is interesting because Jay-Z's voice is probably the most, like, if you ever hear him talk, he's just very kind of like a chill kind of just, I think that, from New York, I don't know, this is a terrible Jay-Z impression, but whatever. But then when he raps, he gets very like boastful. Where he's like, "Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Ho." You know what I mean? But I definitely think on this album, it's very conversational. Very much so, bringing it into that sort of space where it just feels like Jay-Z's just sitting there on the couch in his big, multi-$100 million mansion, sipping a cup of Douce, just telling it like it is. It's kind of like his vibe on this album, and it's the way the album is mixed. Like I said, I mean, the drums don't knock. There's some songs that don't even have a bass line. It seems like, and the hi-hats aren't rattling off in your ear. The samples are always way deep in the mix, sort of pushed back so as you can hear Jay-Z's voice on top of it. And the few features that there are, there's a Damian Marley feature on there. There's a Frank Ocean feature on there. There's even a Beyonce feature on there. But they're all sort of treated and mixed to be like another sample. They have this texture to them that's almost as if they were recorded 30, 40, 50 years ago. And Jay-Z is the only new voice on the entire album. And even as some of the drums on there are very interesting, where, for instance, on the song Smile or on the song Family Feud, which both of those have to me some of the most modernist drum programming on the entire record. Those two songs both also have some of the most kind of boom bappy style drums that are obviously sampled from older records. So that it sort of bridges the gap between the new and the old styles. I would say overall, the vibe I get from this album is almost as if it's not like a traditional rapping album. It's not really a traditional hip-hop album. It's more just kind of like a rapper-songwriter album. If you ever know singer-songwriter music, I'm a big fan of like Fiona Apple, who is that? Fiona Apple, Regina Spektor. Back in the day, it was like Joni Mitchell, Simon and Garfunkel. Like, imagine that, but like hip-hop. That's like the best way I can explain this album. It's not really meant to, those styles of music are very much expressive. They're very much more so about you sort of trying to get into the artist's head and sort of them just expressing what's going on in their heart and their soul and their mind to you. Whereas hip-hop, because it started in the parks, it started from playing the dozens and trying to get people to go, oh, or whatever. Hip-hop is very much so about getting a reaction out of the audience. And Jay-Z is no stranger to that. I mean, most of his music, I think, has been the type of music that you can dance to, that you're going to want to do hip-hop hand to at the concert, or you're going to want to go, oh, that line was nice. I feel like on this album, he completely steps away from that. Hence the whole Kill Jay-Z moniker kind of starting the album. The album just kind of gives a more nuanced, personal, and reflective view on his space in the rap industry. Because I mean, that's essentially what the whole album is. I think it's definitely the album that sums up where Jay-Z is in his life, his own life, and also in pop culture and the rap game as well. And to sort of get into wrapping all of this up, I definitely think that this is an album that hip-hop needs. I think there's so many older rappers out there who are rapping about the same things they rapped about when they were in 25 or when they were in their 20s. You know, there's so many rappers out there that are almost in their 40s, if not in their 40s, that are rapping about the same thing as the kid who's 19 or 20. And I feel like that's cool, but young rappers and just young people in general have to have something cool to aspire to be when they're older, when we're 50, when we're 47, you know, when we're in have a family. And what are we gonna want to listen to when we're with that age, you know? And what are we gonna want to aspire to when we're that age? I feel like these are the types of hip-hop albums that really show the maturation of hip-hop as a genre. I feel like these are the type of hip-hop albums that show where hip-hop can go down the line, show the longevity of a hip-hop artist, show that you don't have to stop rapping when you're 35 if you're hot in your 20s. You can keep going and make albums that are relevant to where you are, but still dope, and still someone like me who's 22 years old can get into and vibe and want to play in the car. I know that there's a lot of talk on Instagram and Twitter. A bunch of people are going to be talking about how Jay-Z's addressing, you know, the rumors of cheating on Beyonce. But again, I mean, that's not what this album is about. This album is really just about how does Jay-Z, or Sean Carter I should say, because he does say kill Jay-Z at the beginning of the album, how does he deal with where he is in life? Not just in the hip-hop industry, not just in his place in the world, but in his own life. And how does he deal with that? How does he go about growing as a human being past middle age? And how does he go about imparting wisdom on the younger fans? So to wrap this all up, you know, I don't do numbers, I don't do letters, A, B, C, D, F. I do recommendations. So I would say this is an album. If you are a Jay-Z fan, you probably already heard it, so I'm not speaking to you. If you are a casual Jay-Z listener, you don't like him, you don't dislike him, I would say check the album out. You'll probably actually like it, to be honest. It's definitely a refreshing album for anybody that's a hip-hop fan who maybe is a little tired of what's going on in the hip-hop landscape as of right now. I would say if you aren't a fan of Jay-Z, if you actively dislike Jay-Z, I would actually suggest you listen to this album, because probably what you dislike him for is you maybe think he's a little too braggadocious, you maybe feel like he doesn't get personal or conscious enough, and I would say that this is the exact opposite of that. He's definitely conscious, he's definitely personal on this album. He's definitely giving you a side of him that you aren't used to. Then if you aren't even a hip-hop fan, if you, let's say you just don't like hip-hop in general, I'd still say you might not be impressed by this album. If you're open-minded, give it a chance, because it is probably different than what you think of as hip-hop, if you're not a hip-hop fan. But at the end of the day, I did say it was a rapper-songwriter album, but it's still a rapper-songwriter album. It's still hip-hop. So if you aren't a fan of hip-hop, you might not like this album. But I mean, you know, put it on shuffle and listen to a couple of songs, you know, see what you think about it. That's 444, the music review, the first video on this channel. If you stuck around this long, I mean, thanks. Subscribe, like the video. I'm gonna be coming up with more content, really breaking down the music theory behind hip-hop, and just your favorite tracks. And yeah, I love you.